All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melonheads of the world. Happy Friday, everybody. Today's December 13th, 2024. And the top story this morning is something I saw talking about it in Bloomberg. They're talking about it in the Wall Street Journal this morning. Apparently, Trump and his advisors over at the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, are mulling getting rid of the FDIC, just ditching it and transferring its functions over to the Treasury Department. Now, I've got mixed feelings about this, but I can tell you most of my feelings about this are that this is the wrong thing to do. I'm supportive of cutting government bureaucracy. I think there's way too much of it. We need to get rid of it. We spend way too much money. This is no secret. I've also been highly critical of the FDIC in the last 2 years or so, especially since the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. I think the FDIC absolutely failed in its mandate to protect American small depositors, not big Silicon Valley tech startups and Chinese investors like got bailed out at Silicon Valley Bank. And then later on with all the other banks that failed across the country, all receiving unlimited bailouts. I think the FDIC totally failed in their mission. I think the carve out, the systemic risk exception that we put in the back of Dodd-Frank that basically left the back door open to bailouts, that has now become so commonly used that it's essentially the front door. It's not a back door anymore because they use it every time. That is right up until that little bank in Lindsay, Oklahoma failed earlier this year. Then all of a sudden the FDIC says, no, we're not going to bail out people in flyover country. We don't care about them. They're too small. They're too small to care. Let them lose money. But we bailed out the Chinese investors over at Silicon Valley Bank. Somehow that made sense. So in my opinion, there's no shortage of criticism of the FDIC, right? That doesn't mean we get rid of the FDIC and we roll its function into Treasury, because Treasury is an inherently political institution. It's run by the Treasury Secretary. And, case in point, if you think it's a good idea, and this is for my Trumpers out there, I know I try not to do too much politics, but let's face facts. We probably have more Trumpers following than Bideners following here. And that's fine. Everybody's welcome here. It's not an echo chamber. But let me ask you something. Would you be okay if Joe Biden was doing this and he was going to get rid of the FDIC and give all that extra power to Janet Yellen? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't be okay with Donald Trump doing it and giving all that power over to Scott Bessent. Because sooner or later, the other guy's going to be in charge again, and then you have to live with it. And in my opinion, the FDIC was created after the Great Depression. The whole point of the FDIC was to shore up confidence in the banking system so that the average person did not fear for his money's safety, run to the bank and take his money out. But that is not what the FDIC has done. The FDIC has protected big institutions, big companies, people with a lot of money in the bank. And because they have protected the big banks, but not the small banks, they have created a stampede out of the small banks, in effect, creating runs on small banks. And now all the money is flooding into the big banks. That's leading to bank consolidation. Because of the way the FDIC does business, we now have hundreds fewer banks in this country, and it's getting worse. And if you extrapolate this across several decades, sooner or later, we are going to end up with one bank remaining, the Federal Reserve. And that is wrong. So what would President Jack do? Sorry, I just picture all the degenerate stuff I did in college and in my youth. No, not happening, guys. Sorry. But no, President Jack would say, we're going to leave the FDIC where it is. We are going to shrink it along with the Treasury and everybody else. And we are going to get rid of the systemic risk exception in Dodd-Frank. We're going to throw it out. 250 is the limit, period, hard stop. If you lose money because your bank collapsed, it sucks. I'm sorry, but I have no right to socialize your losses across people who were unaffected by it. That's what we should be doing, but that's not what they're talking about doing. They're talking about expanding FDIC coverage. They're talking about more bailouts, and then they want to move the FDIC over to an inherently more political institution. What Trump and DOGE is recommending is going to make the problems in the banking system worse, not better. And this is one of the reasons why I said in the lead up to the election, guys, ultimately, it doesn't matter. They are both going to bring back the easy money. They are both going to bring back inflation. It's going to smell different. It's going to look different. It's going to have different attributes to it, but when the cards are down, they will both print money, and that's ultimately where this is headed. It's not going to be a big savings for the government. It's just going to make the bailouts easier and more common. And like right on cue, we've got Flushing Financial today, ticker FFTC, I believe is the stock ticker for this one. They're a small bank, less than 10 billion in assets. They are raising capital, 70 million, I think it was, or was it 70 billion? Sorry, I got my numbers a little crossed this morning. But Flushing Financial is raising capital to deal with losses from commercial real estate. We haven't talked about that one in a while, but that is still out there. And now that it looks like the Fed is in the middle of its easing cycle, we've got a lot of banks are probably going to start doing this. They're finally going to start selling some of those commercial real estate holdings. They're finally going to start realizing some of those losses. And, well, Flushing Financial, in this case, they're going to issue new stock to raise money to absorb those losses and increase their capital buffers. So, while we're talking about this story at the FDIC, let's not forget, guys, there is no shortage of existential risks to the banking system that have not gone away, and even one of those rearing its ugly head today. Elsewhere, we've got Broadcom is in the news this morning. They posted an earnings beat and a big one. Revenue up 51% year over year. Net income up 23% year over year. Great numbers from Broadcom. Of course, AI. The big story, though, what has people talking is Broadcom announced that they are in a deal right now with, they didn't say who, they said 3 massive hyperscalers in order to design and build custom AI chips for those hyperscalers. And when I hear 3 massive hyperscalers, I can't help but think we're probably talking about Microsoft, probably talking about Alphabet, Google, and we're probably talking about Meta. That third one, Meta, maybe not, maybe. But they're the ones that are pumping all this CapEx. And these are the companies that are spending tens of billions a quarter on NVIDIA's chips, and they all want their own chips so they can spend that money in-house. And it looks like they're teaming up with Broadcom for that. Broadcom stock is ripping higher on this news this morning, double digits. We've also got earnings from Costco that were pretty good, came out. Some signs of life from the consumer, perhaps, or maybe Costco is just a beneficiary of bad consumer behavior elsewhere in the economy. But we got comparable sales up 5.2%, foot traffic up 5.1%, e-commerce up 13%. Really good numbers from Costco, although they did point out a couple of things. They referenced the bifurcation. They're seeing a lot of big ticket items are selling, like gold. People are buying a lot of gold at Costco. Jewelry is selling. Big name TVs are selling. But at the same time, in their grocery section, they're seeing a lot of people are trading down. They're buying less prime cuts, premium meat cuts, more ground beef, more poultry. So you're seeing that bifurcation of the consumers as most people are doing very poorly, struggling with the cost of living, but a few people are doing really well, and they're buying the big ticket stuff over at Costco. We also got an interesting story coming out of Norway this morning. Norwegians are sick of paying higher power prices because of the rest of Europe. Now, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Norway is like is the energy juggernaut of Europe. They got that big Groningen gas field that's just off the coast of Norway. They produce almost all of the natural gas that Europe produces in a year. They pipe it and they power it everywhere. So Norway is a very energy secure country, and yet power prices in Norway are skyrocketing right now because of the Dunkelflaut. I love that word. The Dunkelflaut is the term for when the wind ain't blowing. And, well, if you're Germany and the UK and all the other European countries and all you've done is build windmills for the last few years, you got no power. And so what do? You buy it from Norway through these grid interconnections in the European countries. Well, that sucking sound, all that energy being drained from Norway, is driving power prices sharply higher for Norwegian citizens who are saying, why the hell is my electricity going up? Because the Germans elected these green imbeciles who shut down all their freaking power plants. And so you've got Norwegian politicians are saying, let's sever the connections, possibly a breakdown of that unity and harmony among European Union countries there. By the way, I don't think Norway is officially a member of the European Union, but when it comes to the energy markets, they function essentially the same way. And last but not least, the UnitedHealth CEO is in the press this morning. Not the guy who was murdered, the actual CEO of the corporation. Brian Thompson, who was shot in the back and killed, he was the CEO of the insurance division. UnitedHealth is a bigger company than that. But the actual CEO is out in the press today. You can smell the fear in his words. He's basically saying, don't shoot. I know the system is broken. and I'm willing to help fix it. Guys, all the insurance execs from other insurance companies, they all pulled their pictures and their faces off the company websites after Brian Thompson was murdered. You better believe they are paying attention over in the insurance industry, and they are worried. And, well, look, guys, there's no shortage of problems in the healthcare industry. I've covered a lot of them on this channel and over at DNN, but it does not excuse murder. I can't tell you how much over the last few days I have argued with both sides of the people in this god-awful situation. I've argued with the people who are like, screw the healthcare industry, they deserve it, good, pitchforks, Robin Hood, all that stuff. No. All right, vigilante justice is not justified. Murder, shooting an unarmed man in the back is not justified. And then the other people who are like, Brian Thompson was an innocent man, and he was so nice at the company picnic, and he gave money to a little league team. No, Brian Thompson was a human parasite and a leech who got rich, sucking off of the misery of other people at UnitedHealth. And this is not like just some socialist talking point about the healthcare system. What UnitedHealth has done and Brian Thompson himself had done was freaking disgusting. Anyways, I've been arguing with people on both sides of the debate because the only winner here is evil. It sucks when things get so bad and greed becomes so endemic, and the lack of prosecution of financial crime and the apathy of everybody else results in people justifying cold-blooded murder. It just sucks, guys. It's basically the end of the movie Seven. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. Why don't we shrink my big melon of head and let's see what's going on in the world of finance, shall we? Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button if you're new here so you can come and have your coffee with the melon heads every morning as we go through markets. The S&P 500 right now is up 17 points, about 1/3% here this morning, although we've had a little bit of red in just the last few minutes. Not sure what's driving that one. The Dow, meanwhile, is 30 points higher, 0.07%, also working its way down here, giving up some of its gains for the morning. And the NASDAQ is sharply higher, 160 points, 0.75%. I'm sure Broadcom's earnings are playing a big role in that. And, of course, the Mag 7 are virtually across the board at all-time highs or, of course, near all-time highs. That's also contributing to the NASDAQ moving higher. We've got a slightly weaker dollar this morning, 106.84. That's down by 12 basis points or about 0.1%. And looking over at the bond market, something kind of interesting this morning. Not sure what's going on here. Investing.com is not showing me the 10-year this morning. And I verified that with my moderator, Mish. Not sure what's up there. But the 30-year Treasury is at 4.568. That's up 2 basis points. The 2-year, 4.203, up about just under 2 points. And the 1 month is at 4.311. That is down 2 points. Now, let's see if I refresh this. Am I going to get the 10-year again? I don't know if this is just a fluke or for some reason now it's not showing. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bring up TradingView here on the fly. And I don't know what's going on there. WTF, you took away my 10-year. But the United States 10-year government bond yield is 4.353. That's also up 2.5 basis points this morning. And last but not least, in the commodities board, we've got spot gold, $2,661. That's down by about $20. Spot silver is also down again this morning, $30.50, down about 47 cents here or 1.5%. It looks like I jinxed it when I talked about silver set to move higher a few days ago with Bob Coleman. We are seeing that gap between the front month contract at $30.94 and the spot price at about $30.50. We're starting to see that gap close. Meanwhile, we got copper is down about 0.75%. Platinum is down 1% and change. Palladium is down 2%. And WTI crude oil is up 0.5% this morning, back above $70 for January WTI futures at $70.37. That's up by about 35 cents here. Looking over at the Bitcoin chart, we are still above 100,000 here. $100,383 is priced on Coinbase. That's up by about $350. Prices continue to consolidate around this $100 level. Now, let's talk about the main story this morning here. Trump advisors seek to shrink or eliminate bank regulators. Advisors are asking potential nominees whether Trump could abolish the FDIC. It's interesting. Of all the things they're talking about getting rid of, it's the FDIC. The Trump transition team has started to explore pathways to dramatically shrink, consolidate, or even eliminate the top bank watchdogs in Washington. In recent interviews with potential nominees to lead bank regulatory agencies, Trump advisors and officials from his newfound Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, have, for example, asked whether the president-elect could abolish the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp. People familiar with the matter said. Advisors have asked the nominees under consideration for the FDIC, as well as the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, if deposit insurance could then be absorbed into the Treasury Department. Any proposal to eliminate the FDIC or any agency would require congressional action. While past presidents have reorganized and rebranded departments, Washington has never shut down a major cabinet-level agency and rarely closed other agencies like the FDIC that are not. Bank executives are optimistic that President Trump will ease a host of regulations on capital cushions and consumer protections, as well as scrutiny of consolidation in the industry. But FDIC deposit insurance is considered near sacred. Any move that threatened to undermine even the perception of deposit insurance could quickly ripple through banks, and the crisis might compound customer fears. After several banks failed last year, customers panicked about whether their deposits were safe at smaller banks. Many fled to the biggest banks that are perceived to be so important that the government would never let them fail. Since then, banks have been calling for wider deposit insurance protections to keep smaller banks competitive. And there's so many issues I have with this story, guys. Yes, what the FDIC did last year was wrong, but what they're proposing here is to make it worse. What they're proposing here to expand deposit insurance is only going to further reward bad behavior by banks. It's only going to further increase the federal deficit and the debasement of the currency that results in widespread inflation. And if they really do move the FDIC under the Treasury is a far more politically influenced institution. It's going to make the problem worse. I am all for shutting down government bureaucracies and trimming the fat. I just think this is the wrong way to go about it. How about we get rid of the systemic risk exception? How about we just say 250 is the cap, period, hard stop, end of story? Why don't we do that? And then we can lay off all the people whose job it is to figure out workarounds around the law so that the rich people never lose money, and all of that happens at our expense. How many people at the FDIC have a job, and it's their job to just come up with bullshit reasons why we should bail out the likes of Silicon Valley Bank so that billionaire startup tech bros in San Francisco don't lose money? But then when it comes time to bail out a little bank in Lindsay, Oklahoma, oh, sorry, too small to care. And then the welding shop loses $300,000 and can't make payroll. You know, that's a business that actually provides a service. You know, they actually produce piping and weld together piping for gas wells and provides energy for the country. Oh, no, we can't bail them out. No, only the tech bros in Silicon Valley who give us glue your pizzas together AI bots. So I really don't like this story, guys. I'm not going to lie. And look, here, look at the money supply chart. This is M2 money supply going back to 2021. All right. You notice this was coming down. We were tightening. We were on our way to fixing the inflation problem. And then the bank failures happened, and they basically printed money into existence and bailed out all the banks. They called it the Bank Term Funding Program, whatever. It expanded the money supply. And all of a sudden, the money supply stops falling, and then it starts growing again. And here we are acting surprised when inflation comes in higher than expected again. I think the two things just might be related. And right on cue, Flushing Financial seeks to raise $70 million with an M to shore up capital as it unloads underwater bonds. Just a reminder, guys, we still got that commercial real estate crisis going on while we're talking about banking insurance. Flushing Financial, a New York-based commercial real estate lender, is seeking to raise $70 million to shore up its capital, CNBC has learned. The bank's CEO, John Byrne, has told potential investors that he intends to sell low-yielding bonds and loans backed by commercial real estate, including multifamily buildings, moves that would generate a loss and necessitate the sale of fresh stock. People with knowledge of the deal told CNBC. Bankers working on the deal have yet to finalize pricing, but it would likely be between $15 and $15.50 per share, according to one of the people below the $17.25 level the stock closed out on Thursday. Banks with commercial real estate exposure have struggled after the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates through 2023, leaving them with unrealized losses on their balance sheets. New York Community Bank was forced to raise capital earlier this year after its stock sank amid concerns over its portfolio of commercial loans. Most of the U.S. banks under pressure are community banks with under $10 billion in assets, like Flushing, which had about $9.3 billion of assets as of September. Now, with a rebound in bank stock prices this year and the start of a Fed easing cycle in September, investors expect more banks to raise capital in the coming months. Behind the scenes, regulators have been prodding banks with confidential orders to improve capital levels. And that's something we were talking about getting rid of in the prior sentence or the prior article. Flushing Financial Corp is down 3.77% this morning at 1660, off by about 65 cents. So just a reminder, guys, commercial real estate, it's still out there. And meanwhile, the AI bubble continues to inflate. Broadcom shares rise 13% on profit beat and massive opportunity in AI. Broadcom reported better than expected fourth quarter earnings on Thursday and said AI revenue for the year had more than tripled. The chipmaker stock jumped after Broadcom CEO Hock Tan said the company is developing custom AI chips with 3 large cloud customers. The shares were up 13% in extended trading. Let's see. Broadcom said it expects first quarter revenue to be about $14.6 billion, just ahead of the $14.57 billion average analysts were estimating. For the fourth quarter, year-over-year revenue increased 51% from $9.3 billion. Net income in the fourth quarter came in at $4.3 billion. That's up 23% year-over-year. And its Semiconductor Solutions Group, which includes the company's AI chips, revenue increased 12%. And they're saying Broadcom is seeing soaring demand from the boom in generative AI infrastructure. For the year, the company said AI revenue jumped 220% to $12.2 billion. Some of that growth is from Ethernet networking parts, which are used to tie together thousands of chips. Hock Tan said Broadcom is currently developing AI chips with 3 very large customers, as he expects each of them to deploy 1 million AI chips in network clusters by 2027. Tan said that total market opportunity for its AI chips, which it calls XPUs, as well as parts for AI networking, could be between $60 billion and $90 billion by 2027. And if he is right about that, I hope you guys are ready for your electricity bills to quadruple, because you're talking about data centers that use more power than New York City is what they're talking about building here. So you better hope that doesn't happen. Broadcom stock, though, ripping higher this morning, up 17.5%, trading at $212. That's $31 higher. AI. Costco, meanwhile, beats on earnings as e-commerce sales jump. There's some interesting things about the consumer in this article. Costco on Thursday beat Wall Street quarterly earnings and sales estimates as e-commerce sales jumped and shoppers bought jewelry, luggage, and furniture. On the membership-based warehouse club's earnings call, Chief Financial Officer Gary Millerchip said customers have remained selective with purchases, but he added they have shown they're willing to spend, especially as inflation comes down, if they see a combination of newness of items, quality, and value. He said Costco's strong sales of meat and produce indicate that shoppers are dining out less and cooking at home more. So you can kind of see, as all the restaurant chains have posted horrible comps, horrible year-over-year numbers, Costco has been the beneficiary of that. He also added that the retailer has seen a bifurcation with the member, with some who are still spending on high-quality premium cuts, others with a gravitation toward those lower prices per pound items across categories like poultry and cuts of beef and pork as well. So you got more people trading down at Costco, people eating out less, buying more meat at Costco because of it. So there's your bifurcation in the economy. Some other interesting things here. Comparable sales for the company increased 5.2% year over year. That's pretty good. Customers visited Costco stores more with the website was up. Traffic rose 5.1% globally in the U.S. So really good numbers from Costco here. Although the stock not doing so well, down 0.5%, $982, down $6.20. So I don't know, maybe Costco needs to talk about AI on their earnings call, and then they can convince some of these bros to buy their stock, and maybe things will go good. But apparently making more money is not the way you get your stock to go higher in this market. Now let's talk about what's going on in Norway. This is nuts. Surging power prices reignite Norwegian energy nationalism. Who had Norwegian energy nationalism on their 2020s bingo card? The latest jump in European power prices has prompted calls by Norway's ruling party to limit power exports, including ending sales on 2 cables to Denmark. And I tell you, the rest of Europe better hope this doesn't happen, or their power prices are going to skyrocket. The latest jump in European power prices has prompted calls by Norway's ruling party to limit power exports, including ending sales on 2 cables to Denmark. Dropping the Danish link when the contract is up for renewal in 2026 will be one of the main points in the Labour Party election manifesto ahead of the vote next September, according to members responsible for assembling the document. Power prices for Thursday in Oslo's region jumped to their highest since December of 2022. but retreated 65% for Friday. In spite of full water reservoirs, power prices are sky high, said Ingvild. Oh, man, don't ask me to pronounce these Norwegian names. I'm sorry. Ingvid says the reservoirs are full, but power prices are still sky high. Now, what they're talking about there with the water reservoirs, that's pumped hydro storage. What they do in Norway and in a lot of places, including here in the States, when power prices are cheap during periods of low demand, like at night during the fall, they run pumps and they pump water uphill into reservoirs. They're basically storing potential energy. And then when power prices are high, they run that water downhill through a turbine to get that energy back. Now, there are a lot of losses. You lose power when you pump it uphill and then run it through a turbine downhill. But because of the difference in price, it's actually economically beneficial to do that. And you can help stabilize the grid that way. And they're saying here, look, all of our reservoirs are full. We've got extra power available because of the pumped hydro storage. But even that is not enough because the rest of Europe is sucking so much power out of our grid because all they've done for the last 30 years is build freaking windmills. It's very hard to explain to people in Norway why a country with a large power surplus should have high electricity prices. The latest view of Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store's labor matches earlier statements by its senior partner, the Agrarian Center Party, and echoes the positions aired during the energy crisis a few years ago when Norway threatened to curb exports to protect domestic supplies. Though the nation isn't a European Union member, it is part of the single energy market, and rules state that countries aren't allowed to curtail flows to neighbors for prolonged periods. Norway's nationalistic approach to the power market contrasts with its role as the European Union's biggest supplier of natural gas, meeting about a third of the continent's needs. So the people who don't have the insane energy prices or energy policies are still getting the higher rates because, well, they're selling all the power into those lucrative markets. Now, the Norwegian power companies are making money hand over fist, but the Norwegian people don't think they should pay higher electricity rates because of the rest of Europe, and I'm having a hard time disagreeing with them for that. And also going on this morning, look at this one. UnitedHealth CEO talks about Brian Thompson's death for the first time and calls for reforms. This guy sounds scared, I can tell you that. UnitedHealth CEO Andrew Whitty, again, Brian Thompson was the CEO of the insurance division. This is the CEO of the corporation. Andrew Whitty said the U.S. healthcare system is flawed as he called for its reform on Friday. And it's his first public comments since the killing of the company's top healthcare executive, Brian Thompson, last week. We know the health system does not work as well as it should, and we understand people's frustrations with it, Whitty wrote in a New York Times opinion published Friday. The system is a patchwork built over decades, Whitty said. Let's fix it. We are willing to partner with anyone, as we always have, healthcare providers, employers, patients, pharmaceutical companies, governments, and others, to find ways to deliver high-quality care and lower costs. Well, Brian or Andrew Whitty, here's how you might start. You might start with lowering your rejection rate for claims. UnitedHealth's rejection rate has skyrocketed in the last few years. You could start by doing your effing job and not declining so many claims for things like, let's say hypothetically, lower back pain, which is exactly what drove this man to murder, because it's one of the most commonly things that your company declines coverage for, even though it absolutely destroys the quality of life of the people suffering from it. I can tell you that from personal experience. You can start by covering that more often. You could also start by no longer bribing your customers with gift cards and random cold calls to send nurse practitioners to their house to conjure up phony diabetes and HIV diagnoses in order to bill Medicare Advantage tens of billions of dollars extra for diagnoses that these patients never even get treated for, and in some cases aren't even aware they've been diagnosed. Maybe you could stop doing those things if you're serious about reforms. You don't pin this all on the government. You're doing this stuff of your own free will, Mr. Whitty. You can make these changes without punting to Congress. This is on you, buddy. Anyways, all of that stuff, once again, guys, not condoning murder. This is a breakdown of the social contract when executives are getting shot in the back in the streets because crime and corruption is just so rampant that people feel they have no other recourse. It's a breakdown of the social contract. And if this kind of stuff starts happening, you end up with things like the freaking Bolshevik revolutions or the French Revolution. Not good. Not good for anyone. And last but not least, I want to talk about this one from Walter Bloomberg this morning. Used car demand surged in 2024 amid high auto prices. This was pretty interesting here. Demand for used vehicles shot up in 2024 as consumers became more price conscious in response to high interest rates and stubbornly high auto prices, according to Car Guru's Kevin Roberts in a report. Inventories of new vehicles increased 31% as their average prices hovered around $49,000. And that stuck out at me. Whoa. Inventories of new vehicles up 31%. Now you know why these auto manufacturers are in such bad shape. They can't move new cars. Their average prices still hover around $49,000, while supply in the used car market has tightened as average prices declined 3% to $27,900. And I couldn't believe that. That is the average price of a used vehicle is now almost $30,000. What has happened in the car market? Roberts expects consumers will continue to prioritize affordability in the year ahead, particularly if Trump follows through on his proposed tariffs and threat to end the electric vehicle tax credit. Those are two things that will drive up car prices. You better believe it. Tariffs aren't inflationary. But 31% increases in new car inventory. Wow. $27,900 average used car price. Wow. The numbers in the auto market are just getting obscene. I want to say thank you so much to Armando Reyes. Thank you, Armando. He says bank consolidation equals CBDC. Very interesting, Armando. And I would love to disagree with you, but I can't. CBDCs become easier if people have fewer options in the banking system. And FedCoin and FedNow, which is currently being rolled out. Absolutely. I think consolidation in the banking system is not good for consumers. And unfortunately, all the actions the government and the regulators have taken and the FDIC have taken over the last few years has only accelerated that consolidation. And in my opinion, if Trump does what he's saying and he gets rid of the FDIC and rolls that into Treasury, it's only going to speed that up further, ultimately leading to just one bank remaining, the Federal Reserve. Thank you, Armando, for supporting the channel, sir. And I agree with you very much so. Mighty Mike, thank you, sir. It says 10-year yield bounced off 250-day, passed up through the 200-day, 10-2 plus 14. We did, what was it, a golden cross I think we just saw in the 10-year yield not too long ago. Let me bring that chart back up. I believe we had a golden cross there. Did I close it? Oh, I closed it out here. We can do it right here. Now there it is. I don't have my moving averages. It's going to take me too long to do it live on the air to put my moving averages in there. I don't want to have all that dead space. But yeah, the one thing I would note, guys, the 10-year yield, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it here. Look, here's where they cut rates right here. And rates did nothing but rise for 2 months after that. Now we had a little bit of a correction here. We saw rates came down from the middle of November through about the beginning of December. But look, now they're heading higher again. And, you know, it really looks like that period of sustained higher rates is here. The Fed appears to be losing control of the long end of the yield curve. They haven't totally lost control of it, but they're lowering on the short end and the long end is moving higher. So if you're banking on lower rates like cheaper mortgages and things like that, I'm not so sure you're going to get that, guys. Just something to think about. And maybe that's why that the refi numbers for the mortgage applications this week was so high. People are FOMOing into refis, maybe because they don't think interest rates are going to go lower. Thank you, Mighty Mike, for pointing that out. Appreciate the super chat, sir. Charles G says the FDIC is political anyways. FDIC bailed out the bank in California, had Newsom's money, but didn't bail out a bank in Oklahoma. Partially correct, Charles. They did a partial bailout of the bank in Oklahoma. Uninsured depositors got 50 cents on the dollar back, not all of their money back. It seems kind of arbitrary, though. And, you know, Oklahoma Senator Lankford, he called out this exact scenario in Congress during hearings last year when he was grilling Secretary Yellen, who said, are you going to guarantee every bank, including rural banks in my state, if they fail, or are you only going to bail out the rich people banks on the coast? And Yellen totally dodged the question. Well, we got our answer a few months ago. No, they won't. They only got back 50 cents on the dollar. And, you know, why is that bank in Kansas that failed? They're a systemic risk. Why is that Republic First Bank in Pennsylvania that failed earlier this year? Why are they a systemic risk, but the little bank in Lindsay, Oklahoma isn't? It cries favoritism, And it sucks. How'd you like to be that guy that runs that welding shop in Lindsay that lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably struggling to make payroll? The guy's not rich, but he runs a company that has to make payroll every month. So maybe there's at times a lot of money in the bank, but it's not his money. He's got to pay his people. Now he can't pay his people because the bank failed and he lost all of his money because of some crook who's probably mixed up in drug smuggling. And now all of a sudden, this company's probably going belly up. These are guys who weld pipe together in the natural gas fields. They actually provide a tangible service and produce a commodity. Oh, no, we can't bail them out. They actually do something. No, let's bail out Silicon Valley because AI. Yeah, I agree, Charles. I agree with you, sir. Thank you for the super chat, support of the channel. Thank you to Uncle Fedster, says, happy Friday, Jack. Good job on the Bob Coleman interview. Thank you, Uncle Fedster. And I apologize for jinxing silver again. As soon as I opened my big mouth, the price of silver started moving lower. But I do still agree with Bob's analysis there. It does look like silver prices are a coiled spring getting ready to move higher here. Although we've seen that premium, that EFP premium has contracted a little bit in the last day or two here, but it's still pretty big. Thank you very much, Uncle Fetzer, for supporting the channel. Ben Deco says, thanks, Jack. And Jack says, you're welcome, Ben. Thank you for the super chat, sir. Thanks for supporting the channel and the good vibes. Gomers44 says, when the FDIC is dissolved, how will the Treasury make depositors whole? Give us Bitcoin? I'll take gold. Thank you very much. I'll be honest with you. I would, if I was in a bank that failed, I mean, if they had reimbursed the Silicon Valley Bank people with Bitcoin, they'd be up several 100% right now. So that would have worked out in their favor dramatically. Well, look, here's the thing with the FDIC. The FDIC's, their deposit insurance fund is a line of text on a spreadsheet. That's all it is. The money is in the Treasury, and the money comes from the Treasury. And if the deposit insurance fund goes to zero and there are still liabilities from a failed bank, they borrow the money from the Treasury. So ultimately, the source of the funds it's already the Treasury. They've already kind of blurred that line between Treasury and FDIC. So it's not that big of a move. My biggest gripe with what they're talking about doing here is they're essentially codifying into law, or trying to anyway. They're going to codify into law all the things they did wrong during the bank failures of 2023, and they're going to make it worse. That's my biggest issue with this story. Thank you very much, Gomers, for supporting the channel. Evan Francis says the 3-month and the 10-year uninverted. Now, if the BOJ raises rates again, we're in for a bad January. Much to learn we still have. Thank you, Master Yoda. Waves hand like a Jedi. All right, this guy's speaking my language here. There was an article this morning that Mish and I were talking about. The BOJ is right now saying we're probably not going to hike in December. We're probably going to wait until January. I can't imagine why they're saying that, because the Bank of Japan has just the absolutely most ludicrous, fundamentally insane monetary policy in the planet right now, and they are taking their sweet-ass time in changing that. I get it. They're worried about the unwind of the yen carry trade, and they're worried about their stocks crashing. But they've got to stop what they're doing, man. The rates near zero. I mean, they were negative for years. You can't do that and not expect problems down the line. So we could be in for a bad January, Evan, but right now all the indicators are the easy money is going to keep flowing. I see nothing on the horizon that tells me they're not going to pump the easy money the second the going gets tough here. So any dips will probably be very short-lived. That means get ready for higher inflation. Thank you, Evan, for supporting the channel. My man, the Pasta Man, is back. Says, morning, Jack. Reality in the social media age, all banks are systemically important. Interesting thought process. You're probably right. We are one viral video away from an unsustainable run on fiat. One viral video away. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because of the coordination between big tech and the FBI and, the Twitter files and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure in the age of social media that YouTube and Meta, pretty much anybody but Twitter will, and probably now that Trump is in office, Twitter will do this too, at the behest of financial regulators, they will throttle videos like that. I guarantee you they will do that. Probably more so on Twitter now that I think about it, now that Elon is part of the Trump administration, essentially, or at least he is figuratively speaking, not really on paper. It's not a paid position. But I think social media would coordinate with financial regulators to suppress alarmist financial rhetoric during a run on the banks. I don't know if it'll work, but they will sure as hell try. But you're right. Information moves a lot quicker now. I'm not sure they'd be able to suppress that information. Thank you, Pasta Man, for supporting the channel. Armando Reyes says, I can totally see the government turning on banks and saying how bad they are just to prop up Bitcoin. And then before you know it, they seize Bitcoin. Well, the government can't seize Bitcoin, but they can seize people, and they can say, you're going to stay in this cage until you give us your seed phrase. And then once they have your seed phrase, seize your Bitcoin. So there are human ways they could seize Bitcoin, but they can't actually go into the blockchain and take it. That doesn't exist. And regardless of what Google says about parallel alternate universes in the multiverse, that technology will not exist for a long time still. But I don't know why the government would want to prop up Bitcoin, to be honest with you. I don't think the government wants to prop up Bitcoin. And if the government does want to prop up Bitcoin, well, you better own some Bitcoin if they decide they want to do that, because that means they're going to debase their fiat in order to buy the Bitcoin to prop it up. Either way, own some Bitcoin, own some shiny. I like both. Enough of the false dichotomy between gold and Bitcoin. It's not a one or the other thing. They don't even live in the same space in the risk-reward spectrum. They do have some overlap in that they are hedges against fiat depreciation, but the similarities pretty much end there. Thank you, Armando, for supporting the channel, sir. Thank you to Big Mouth Barry. Says, is Bob Coleman the Jim Cramer of the metals world? No, he is not. Be honest with you, Bob is one of the few realists I've met in the metals world. Right after posting your interview, silver has now lost 8%. Thanks for all you do, Jack. That's my timing. I reached out to Bob on Thursday to get that interview because I saw his tweets before that big run on Monday. We couldn't get the interview done before the run on Monday happened. Then as soon as I posted the interview, the Monday run unwound. So we're essentially right back to where we were Thursday when I first reached out to Bob about doing the interview last week. But all the things that Bob had mentioned, the technical indicators of a bottom, the crowded short trade, the EFP premium is still elevated. It's still higher than usual, although it has come in a little bit. But almost everything, I'll say everything Bob said in that interview still applies despite the crash in metals of the last 2 days. And, look, big drops in metal prices, nothing new here. No, Bob is not the Jim Cramer. I would say I am the Jim Cramer of metals before I'd say Bob was the Jim Cramer of metals. Unfortunately, I jinxed it. I apologize, Silver Stackers. I ruined the rally. It's my fault. Jack did it. Thank you, Big Mouth Barry. And thank you, Charles G. says, did you see the AI expansion has plateaued? If AI has plateaued, when will these stocks drop? Has plateaued, when will they drop? I'll be honest with you, I don't think the stocks drop until, number one, we get like actual delisting of Supermicro, which could still happen at any time. They have until February to get their financials done. They're probably not going to get delisted before February. But my guess is it's going to be a disappointing growth forecast by NVIDIA that finally torpedoes this rally. One of these days, and today is not that day, but one of these days, NVIDIA is going to report a wonderful quarter, and then their forward guidance is going to come out, and they're going to have one wishy-washy statement about some slowdown in the enthusiasm or some normalization of demand. They'll use wishy-washy language like that, and everybody's going to say, oh, shit, this is it. All right. I don't know when that's going to be. They will delay that until it's too late. Let me just say that. They will keep up. They'll keep stuff in the channel. They'll keep round tripping their money as long as possible to keep this train rolling. But sooner or later, that is going to happen. It is when, not if. And when that happens, people finally start asking questions. And then they go back and they look at the books and say, how come you didn't say something sooner? And then, well, everybody says, oh, I guess they were right about that all along, huh? Thank you very much, Charles. And thank you, Nashville, who says Luigi wasn't a UnitedHealth policyholder. That is interesting. I did not know that. Are we sure about that? He wasn't. I can tell you Luigi was a trust fund baby. He sure as heck wasn't some like Antifa, like, working class hero guy. I mean, that kid came from old money. He went to Penn, which costs more money a year than most people make in a year. So Luigi was not a poor man by any standards. I didn't know he was not a UnitedHealth policyholder. I kind of just assumed that, but that's a good point. Thank you, Pasta Man. And the Beekeeper says the AI plateau and ensuing cliff. AI. Oh, yeah, guys, sooner or later that cliff is coming. But it's not here yet, and it can always go higher. I mean, look, bubbles are irrational behavior. And how do you predict the end of irrational behavior? How can you look at a herd of stampeding bulls and say, they're going to stop there? There is no way to mathematically model or predict when they stop. Sooner or later, they're going to stop. Do not stand in front of them and bet your life that they're going to stop, which is why I never shorted any of these stocks, because you just can't model it mathematically. It's irrational behavior, which is not rational. Thank you, Beekeeper. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you, Jana Williams, for the super sticker. I appreciate that very much. Once again, the super stickers do not show, but she's saying cool. I'm a lot of things, Jana. Cool, probably not among them. Let's be honest with you. I definitely stopped being cool when I turned 30, and it's debatable whether I was ever cool. Probably wasn't. A lot of people are going to say, no, Jack, you were never cool. Regardless of what your mother told you, you were never cool. Thanks, Mom. I love you. Eduardo Garcia says, Bitcoin only fulfills its creation in a free market? ? Bitcoin only fulfills its creation in a free market. I'm not entirely sure what you're saying there, Eduardo. I can tell you a lot of what's going on in the crypto industry right now is counter to Bitcoin's, to let's say the spirit of what Bitcoin was created for. Centralized exchanges, decentralized finance, which are basically just banks for crypto, and certainly Fartcoin and Hawk2A token and all this other crap flies in the face of everything that Bitcoin was created to fix. They're actually more emblematic of the problems that drove the creation of Bitcoin: centralization of finance, corruption, government bailouts. So, things like the Bitcoin ETFs, in my opinion, kind of, even if it does bring money into the Bitcoin space in the short term, I think in the long term, it introduces new vulnerabilities that is contrary to the mission of the Bitcoin white paper. So I agree with that sentiment. I think that's kind of where you were going with the comment. And in a free market, yeah, we definitely don't have a free market. That's for sure. And again, reflecting that earlier comment, there's no way the government can take your Bitcoin. They can take it from a Coinbase wallet, because if you have your money on Coinbase, you don't have Bitcoin. You have an IOU Bitcoin from Coinbase, and the government can certainly take that if Coinbase is willing to play ball. But if you've got money in your own cold storage wallet, the government can't go in and take it from you. They can put a gun to your head and demand you give it to them, and most people would probably comply. But that's just something to keep an eye on there. Thank you, Eduardo. I appreciate the super chat, guys. Thank you so much for all the super chats and for supporting the channel today. I don't know why I left that chart up the whole time. Appreciate that very much. Also, thank you to my magnanimous melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Links down below should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Till next time, live small and dream big.